If someone told me that family is the most sacred thing in the world, I would laugh. My family? They discarded me long ago. They don't care whether I live or die, as long as someone is still willing to provide them with money. I am Olivia, 28 years old, a financial analyst at one of the largest investment firms in New York. My life is considered stable, perhaps even enviable. A high-end apartment in the heart of Manhattan, a well-paying job, and enough savings to buy a house soon without needing a loan. I built all of this on my own, without asking for help from anyone, and most importantly, without any support from my family. In fact, I cut ties with them 8 years ago, and I have never regretted that decision. 8 years ago, I walked out of my childhood home with nothing but empty hands and a bleeding heart. That was the day I realized that, in their eyes, I was never important enough. I had done everything to be acknowledged, to make them proud, to prove that I was also worthy of love. But in the end, I was just a faint shadow next to their beloved daughter, Chloe. Chloe was 2 years older than me, and in my parents' eyes, she was the center of the universe. Since childhood, I had grown used to being pushed aside to make room for her. My birthday parties? Always overshadowed by some important event of Chloe's. My academic achievements? No one cared because they were too busy preparing for one of her dances or dates. But I kept trying, believing that if I worked harder, if I excelled more, one day, they would finally see me. The day I received my acceptance letter from one of the most prestigious universities, I thought that was the moment everything would change. I had earned a partial scholarship in finance and only needed a small amount of financial support from my family to fulfill my dream. But when I eagerly shared the news, their response crushed all my hopes. "Olivia, we can't help you with tuition," my mother said casually, not even looking up from her phone. "But you promised. You said you would use Grandma's inheritance to help me go to college." I tried to keep my voice from shaking. My father sighed, his tone filled with boredom. "Things have changed, honey. Chloe is getting married, and we need that money for her wedding. College can wait, but a dream wedding can't be postponed." I stood there, frozen, as my sister merely shrugged. She didn't even bother to apologize. I remember the feeling of hot blood rushing to my face, my chest tightening as if it was being crushed. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, just to be discarded like a worthless object? That night, I packed my bags, walked out of that house, and never looked back. I turned to Aunt Helen, the only family member who had ever treated me with kindness. She pulled me into a hug without needing any explanation, and simply said, "You're not alone, Olivia. You deserve a better life." And I turned those words into motivation. I worked my way through college, struggling to survive in this harsh world, but I never gave up. 4 years later, I graduated with honors and landed my first job in the investment industry. Before long, I climbed the ranks quickly, tripled my salary, and gradually built a life I once thought was only a dream. Now, I have everything I need: a solid career, financial freedom, and most importantly, I am no longer tied to those who never appreciated me. Family? They are just a closed chapter of my past. Or at least, that's what I thought. Until I received a call from Aunt Helen on a chilly November morning. Her voice was as gentle as ever, but I could sense hesitation in her words. "Olivia, will you be coming home for Thanksgiving?" I stiffened. Home? After 8 years? I no longer considered that place my home. But I owed Aunt Helen so much, and I couldn't refuse her outright. I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Are you hosting as usual?" "Yes, but this year, it's a little different." She paused for a moment before continuing. "Your parents and Chloe will be there too." My stomach dropped. I thought I had buried them in the past, but with one simple sentence, all the painful memories came rushing back. I should say no, I should tell her I have other plans. But instead, I let out a quiet sigh. "Aunt Helen, I'm not sure." She didn't push. "Take your time to think about it, Olivia. But no matter what, I would love to see you." I hung up the phone and stared out the window. The gray sky of New York mirrored my own mood. I had escaped them. I had rebuilt my life from nothing. But was I ready to face my past one more time? Old memories never truly disappear. They just lie dormant, waiting for a moment of weakness to resurface, crushing everything you thought had healed. I remember the day my life changed forever. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when I held that acceptance letter in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I had done it. After years of relentless effort, I had earned a partial scholarship for finance. That meant I only needed a small amount of support from my family to afford tuition and living expenses. Just a small amount. Nothing compared to what they had spent on Chloe all these years. I rushed home, almost forgetting the scorching heat burning the pavement. My mother was sitting on the couch, lightly tapping her fingernails against her phone screen. My father was watching the news, a cold beer rolling in his hand. Chloe, as usual, was lounging on the chaise, her eyes glued to her laptop. Probably browsing for more extravagant things for her upcoming wedding. I nearly shouted in excitement. "Mom, Dad, I got in Columbia University's scholarship. I just need a little financial support to cover the rest, and I can enroll." I waited for a smile, a congratulations, or at least a nod of approval from them. But all I received was heavy silence. My mother sighed, set her phone down on the table, and crossed her arms. "Olivia, we can't help you." I froze. "What? But you promised Grandma's money. She made it clear it was for my college." My father glanced at me, his face showing clear irritation. "We've already used it." I blinked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Used it? On what?" Chloe laughed, not even bothering to hide the smugness on her flawless face. "My wedding, of course. An event this important has to be perfect. Did you think all of this just magically happened?" A loud ringing filled my ears, as if someone had shut off all other sounds in the world, leaving only their harsh words echoing inside my head. "No. No way." I shook my head, my voice cracking. "You promised Grandma. That money was mine. You had no right." My mother cut me off, her voice sharp with annoyance. "Chloe needed it more than you do. You're smart, you can figure things out on your own, but a wedding only happens once in a lifetime, Olivia. You can't be selfish." Selfish? I almost laughed. They had stolen my future, crushed my hopes, and now they were calling me selfish? Years of pent-up emotions surged forward. I could no longer hold back. The family meeting I had envisioned in my head was nothing like this. I had imagined it as a proud moment. One where they would tell me I deserved a bright future. But no. I was just the outsider. I had never truly belonged in this family. "I can't believe this," I whispered, my chest tightening. "You'll be fine, Olivia," my father said, patting the armrest of his chair as if that were some kind of genuine reassurance. "College can wait. But a dream wedding? Not everyone gets that chance." Chloe shrugged. "Come on, Olivia. You can still get a job and pay for school yourself. It's not a big deal, right?" I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. "You're right," I nodded, my voice turning ice cold. "I'll take care of myself. But from now on, don't expect anything from me, ever again." I turned and walked straight to my room, slamming the door shut behind me. I threw my backpack onto the bed, my mind spinning. No money, no support, nothing. But I knew I couldn't stay here another second. I had only one choice. I picked up my phone and dialed the only number I knew I could trust. Aunt Helen answered on the second ring. "Olivia?" Her voice was gentle but full of concern. A lump rose in my throat as the bitter reality sank in. "Aunt Helen, can I come stay with you?" There wasn't a moment of hesitation. "Of course, sweetheart, my door is always open for you." I didn't take much with me, just a small suitcase, a few clothes, some important documents. I didn't bother saying goodbye. As I walked out the door, they didn't even look up. Only when I boarded the bus and watched that neighborhood fade into the distance, did I finally allow myself to cry. But even through the tears, one thing had never been clearer. I was never coming back. No matter what it took, no matter how hard it would be, I swore I would never let them control my life again. I don't know what made me accept Aunt Helen's invitation. Maybe it was gratitude toward her, or perhaps a part of me was still curious. 8 years with no contact, no messages, not a single inquiry. Yet now they appeared, as if nothing had ever happened. I drove to Aunt Helen's house in the late afternoon. The winter sky had already darkened, and the streetlights cast a soft golden glow over the city. My tires rolled slowly over the familiar road, leading me back to the one place that had been my only refuge after I left home. As I stepped out of the car, the scent of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie lingered in the air. A part of me felt relieved. Thanksgiving at Aunt Helen's had never changed. But when I walked through the door, I froze. My parents, Chloe. They sat there, right in Aunt Helen's living room, looking as though nothing had ever happened between us. My father had aged noticeably, with more gray streaks in his hair than I remembered. My mother looked different too. The arrogance she once carried had been replaced by worried lines around her eyes. And Chloe? She was still the same, still perfectly put together, but there was a hint of hesitation in her gaze when she met mine. Aunt Helen quickly stepped beside me, her voice gentle. "I didn't know they were coming, Olivia." I felt my heart pounding faster, but I couldn't just turn around and leave. They had already seen me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room, keeping my expression neutral. My mother was the first to speak. "You're here." Her voice trembled slightly, but I couldn't tell if it was from emotion or discomfort. I crossed my arms, my tone cold. "Yes. Aunt Helen invited me." The air in the room grew heavy. My father glanced at my mother, as if searching for the right words. Finally he sighed, his gaze filled with regret. "Olivia, we were wrong." I didn't respond. I just waited. "We should have reached out to you sooner. We wanted to call, we thought about writing letters so many times, but every time, we stopped because we were ashamed," my mother continued. "We know we hurt you. We know we put Chloe before you too many times. And when you left, we didn't know how to fix it." I clenched my fist slightly, feeling a storm brewing in my chest. Chloe glanced at me, and for the first time that evening, she spoke. "Olivia, I know I was given more than you. I'm not going to make excuses. But back then, I didn't think much about it. Looking back now, I understand what you went through." Their words, no matter how sincere, couldn't erase the old wounds. I still remembered the helplessness I had felt back then. Every cold-hearted word they had spoken when they refused to help me. Those memories didn't fade just because of a few late apologies. "Why now?" I asked, my voice no longer sharp but still full of doubt. "Why wait 8 years?" My mother lowered her head, clutching a tissue tightly in her hands. "Because we were afraid. We thought you would never forgive us. But when Aunt Helen told us you were coming for Thanksgiving this year, we knew this might be our last chance." I didn't know what to say. I had imagined this moment hundreds of times in my head. I had thought that if they ever came back, I would scoff, turn my back on them, and let them live with the consequences of their choices. But now, standing in front of them, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt. Aunt Helen placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, a simple yet encouraging gesture. "Olivia, you don't have to decide anything right now, but maybe you could try." I looked at my mother, then my father, then Chloe. Their eyes no longer held the same superiority or indifference. Only exhaustion, regret, and a flicker of hope. I took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can forgive you right away," I said slowly. "But I can try." No one spoke for a moment. Then my mother gave a small nod, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you, Olivia." My father gave a faint smile, and Chloe nodded, looking grateful. That night's dinner was awkward but not unbearably tense. They didn't try to force anything, nor did they pretend like nothing had happened. They gave me space to breathe, to think. I still didn't know if I could trust them again. But I knew one thing. I was willing to try. The only problem was, I had no idea where this attempt would lead me. Forgiveness is not easy. It's like a fragile bridge trying to reconnect two severed cliffs. And even though I had agreed to try, I wasn't sure if this bridge would last. After Thanksgiving, I started receiving messages from my mother. At first, they were just brief texts. "How are you?" or "How was work today?" I couldn't say I was completely comfortable with it, but at the very least it was a change. My father remained more distant. He wasn't used to taking the initiative to connect. But the one who surprised me the most was Chloe. One Friday evening, as I was getting ready to leave the office, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. "Olivia." A hesitant voice came through. "It's me, Chloe." I froze. This was the first time she had ever reached out to me on her own, after all these years. "Is something wrong?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. On the other end, she sighed. "Can I see you for a bit?" I hesitated but eventually agreed. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near my place. When I arrived, Chloe was already there, clutching a cup of coffee, her eyes cast downward as if unsure how to begin. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. I pulled out a chair and sat down, observing her. Chloe no longer had the same confident, haughty demeanor she once did. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her hair was hastily tied up, and though her clothes were still elegant, they no longer exuded the luxury they once did. "What happened to you?" I asked, not hiding my curiosity. Chloe let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. "My ex-husband is a liar." Her smile was bitter. Not only was he a terrible husband, but he was a disaster financially. Debt, fraud, affairs. I endured it all for 3 years before divorcing him. I remained silent, listening. After the divorce, I had to raise 2 kids alone, no stable job, no savings. I had no choice but to move back in with mom and dad. Chloe looked at me, her voice faltering. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but if you could..." I looked at her for a long moment. Chloe? The one who once had everything, the one who was always sheltered by our parents, was now sitting across from me, asking for help. I didn't know what made me nod. Maybe it was because for the first time, I saw a different version of Chloe. Not the perfect, privileged sister, but a struggling single mother just trying to survive. After that night, I started visiting my parents' house more often. At first I kept my distance, but Sunday dinners slowly became a routine. We didn't talk much about the past. Maybe we all understood that old wounds needed time to heal. I helped in ways that felt right to me. When I noticed the roof leaking, I hired a repairman. When I saw my niece wearing a thin coat in the freezing winter, I bought her a new one. I didn't do it out of guilt. I did it because I knew they truly needed it. One evening as I was about to leave, my mother hesitated. "Olivia, I don't want to ask you for anything, but..." She trailed off, looking uneasy. "Just say it," I replied. She took a deep breath. "The electricity bills, the water bills, everything is piling up. Your father and I have been trying, but it's really difficult. If you could help out a little each month, it would mean so much." I looked at her, then at the worn-down house around us. A part of me reminded myself that I owed them nothing, but another part understood that sometimes, helping isn't about the past. It's about who I choose to be. "All right," I said. "I'll send you $1,500 a month, but there's one condition. You need to start looking for a job." My mother looked at me, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you, Olivia, I truly appreciate it." I nodded, but deep down a lingering doubt remained. Over time, Chloe and I gradually grew closer. She was no longer the girl who only thought of herself. We started having coffee together, and our conversations became less tense. One day, when I mentioned that I had a business trip to Chicago, Chloe looked at me with hopeful eyes. "I've never been to Chicago. If you don't mind, can I come with you?" I was surprised. But then I thought, maybe this was an opportunity for us to spend more time together. All right, but you're paying for your own ticket. Chloe laughed, and for the first time in a long while, she looked genuinely at ease. Deal. Slowly, I began to feel something I never thought I could again. Something that almost felt like family. I wasn't sure if this would last forever. But at the very least, I was willing to try. I once believed that maybe things were finally getting better. That if I gave them a chance, maybe my family would truly change. But I was wrong. I received a call from Aunt Helen on a Saturday afternoon. At that moment, I was sitting in a cafe near my apartment, reviewing financial reports for a major project. When I saw her name on my screen, I quickly picked up. Olivia, do you have a moment? I need to talk to you. I frowned. There was something off about her voice, unlike her usual gentle tone. There was hesitation, tension. Go ahead, Aunt Helen. There was a brief silence before she spoke. I just came back from a gathering with some old friends, Linda and Karen. Do you remember them? They were your family's old neighbors. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. They told me something. Something you need to know. I set my coffee cup down, an uneasy feeling creeping into my chest. What is it? Aunt Helen took a deep breath, as if carefully choosing her words. They ran into your mother and Chloe at the supermarket last week, and they overheard your mother talking with some friends. They were laughing, joking, and calling you their personal ATM. I froze. What? Aunt Helen continued, her voice now filled with anger. Your mother bragged that thanks to you, she didn't need to rush to find a job, that every month you kept sending money, taking care of everything, and that you wouldn't dare refuse. Chloe was even more shameless. She told her friends that all she had to do was drop a hint and you'd pay for any trip. That you were too stupid to realize it. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. The cafe around me suddenly felt unfamiliar. The voices of people chatting fading into a dull hum. They had been using me. Not just that. They had been laughing about it, treating my help like some kind of joke. I'm sorry, Olivia. I didn't want to tell you, but you needed to know the truth. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. A part of me wanted to scream, to smash something. But instead, I just gripped my phone tighter. Thank you for telling me. Aunt Helen was silent for a moment, before asking softly, Are you okay? I let out a laugh, a hollow, joyless sound. No, Aunt Helen, but I will be. I hung up and sat there for a long time. The past few months played in my mind like a slow-motion reel, a montage of warm family dinners. The times I pulled out my wallet to help them. My mother's teary-eyed thank yous. It was all just an act. I had trusted them again, and they had betrayed me again. But this time, I wouldn't give them another chance to do it ever again. I had spent a long time thinking after my call with Aunt Helen. The anger inside me burned hot, but more than that I felt foolish, realizing I had let myself be used again. I had truly believed they had changed, that they genuinely regretted what they had done in the past. But it turned out to be nothing more than a performance, and I had played the perfect fool. But if they thought I would continue blindly catering to them, they were wrong. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront them outright, because they would deny it or twist the situation in their favor. I needed proof. I needed to see their true colors one more time, to make sure I never made this mistake a third time. And so, I decided to test them. 2 days later, I packed a small suitcase with a few clothes, stood in front of the mirror in my apartment and took a deep breath. Then, I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia, sweetheart, what's wrong? Her voice was sweet as honey. I kept my voice shaky, trying to sound like someone on the verge of despair. Mom, something happened. I lost my job. There was a brief but noticeable silence, as if she was processing the information. What? What did you just say? I continued my act. The company made budget cuts. I was part of the layoffs. And on top of that, they're asking me to return part of my bonus due to financial adjustments. I tried, but I can't cover everything. I paused for effect, then let out a deep sigh, as if I was about to break down. Mom, I don't have enough money to keep my apartment. Can I come home for a while? This time, the silence stretched longer. What do you mean, you can't pay your rent anymore? Her voice was no longer as gentle. That's right, I replied. I really need help. I heard a sharp inhale on the other end of the line, and then my mother's tone shifted. Cold and irritated. So that means you won't be sending us money anymore? I purposely let the silence linger for a few seconds before answering softly. No, Mom, at least not for a while. This time, she didn't bother hiding her disappointment. Oh, for God's sake, Olivia, how could you let this happen? Do you have any idea how much we rely on that money? The electricity, the water, the kids' expenses? We depend on you for all of it. A bitter smile curled on my lips. How fast. Just minutes ago, I was still her sweetheart. Mom, I really don't have a choice. Just for a while. I'll find another job soon. She wasn't listening anymore. God, how could you mess everything up like this? She muttered. And then another familiar voice cut in. Chloe. What about the Europe trip? Her voice was sharp. I almost laughed out loud. And to think I actually believed she had changed. What are you talking about? I feigned confusion. The Europe trip, Olivia, you promised. You said you'd cover all the expenses. We already booked hotels and made plans. Don't tell me you're canceling. Chloe, I made my voice sound weaker. I don't have the money. I don't even have a place to stay. What the hell? Chloe snapped. I told my friends you were paying, and now you're saying you can't? How could you do this to me? This time, I stayed silent for real. I had hoped they would at least pretend to be understanding, but no, they didn't even bother hiding their selfishness anymore. Then, my mother's voice cut in again. Listen, Olivia, this house is not an option for you. I narrowed my eyes. What did you just say? If you're not contributing, you can't stay here. We don't have room for someone useless. Those words nearly took my breath away. Before I could react, I heard hurried footsteps, and then the door swung open. Chloe stepped out, my suitcase in her hand, yanking it toward the door. Take your stuff. She tilted her chin up. We don't need you anymore. I looked down at my suitcase, then up at their faces, my mother, my father, Chloe. The people I had once loved. What had I been expecting? A miracle? I let out a slow breath, then grabbed my suitcase and walked out the door. Behind me, my mother's voice rang out. Don't come back unless you have money, Olivia. I didn't turn around. I stepped down the porch, dragging my suitcase along the cold pavement under the streetlights. The wind was sharp, cutting through my coat, but my mind had never felt clearer. They had revealed their true selves. And this time, I wasn't giving them a third chance. Aunt Helen welcomed me with open arms when I arrived at her house. No questions, no judgment, just the warmth I had been missing for far too long. I assume things went exactly as you expected, she said, gently, as I set my suitcase down and sank into the couch. I let out a quiet laugh, but there was no joy in it. No, it was worse than I thought. She didn't say anything else, just silently poured me a cup of hot tea, as if she knew I needed time to process everything. I sat there, watching the steam rise from the cup, then, slowly pulled out my phone. The first thing I did was open my banking app. I scrolled to the automatic transfers section, where, every month, I had been sending $1,500 to my mother's account. Without hesitation, I tapped Cancel Recurring Payment. A confirmation message popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel? I pressed confirm without blinking. Done. No more money flowing into their hands. No more bills for me to cover. No more unreasonable demands. No more weight on my shoulders. Next, I opened the airline's website and went to manage my booking. Chloe's Europe trip. I skimmed through the details. 5-star hotels, first-class flights. All paid for by me. I clicked Cancel Reservation. Quick, clean, with zero regrets. I could already picture Chloe's face when she received the cancellation notice. I was sure she would explode with rage. But this time, I didn't care. A week later, I stood in my new apartment, something I had been quietly preparing for a long time. A spacious space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, filled with natural light. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, every chair in the living room. I had chosen them myself. This was mine. No one had given it to me. No one had helped me. I had built it on my own. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera and snapped a picture. In the frame I stood in the middle of my new apartment, the city skyline glowing behind me in the night. I posted it on social media with the caption, "Dream come true, finally a homeowner, no loans, no burdens, just hard work and resilience. New home. Freedom. No more strings attached." I didn't need to tag anyone, I knew they would see it. And sure enough, less than 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The familiar number flashed, but this time, there was no excitement, no anticipation. I picked up. "Olivia!" My mother's voice was frantic. "What is that picture? You bought a house? But you said you lost your job." I smiled slightly, my voice calm. "Oh, Mom, actually, I never lost my job. It was just a little experiment." There was a deadly silence, then, my mother shrieked. "What do you mean?" "I wanted to see if you cared about me, or just my money," I replied, my tone calm but sharp. "And you know what? You already gave me the answer." "Olivia, sweetheart. That's not what I meant. I was just shocked, you have to understand. Everything can go back to the way it was, right? We're family." I let out a small chuckle, but this time, it wasn't the laughter of someone who still believed that. "No, Mom, nothing can go back to the way it was." "You can't do this to your family," my mother screamed. "We raised you. You owe us." I frowned. "Oh? You took away my college fund to pay for Chloe. When I begged for help, you abandoned me. And when I thought I could give you a second chance, you just used me all over again. So tell me, who really owes who here?" There was commotion in the background. I heard Chloe's voice. "Mom, tell her to rebook my flights right now. I can't believe she canceled my trip." I sighed. "Well, that says it all." "Olivia, don't hang up. We can talk." I ended the call. Then, without hesitation, I went into my contacts and blocked my mother's number. After that, I logged into social media and blocked everyone in the family. The silence that followed was blissful. I looked around my apartment, a wave of relief spreading through my chest. This was my home. A life no longer tied to people who only saw me as a source of money. That evening, Aunt Helen came over. I had made dinner. Her favorite lasagna. "Are you okay?" she asked as we sat on the balcony, looking out over the city. I lifted my wine glass, clinked it lightly against hers, and smiled. "Aunt Helen, I've never felt better. Sometimes, true freedom doesn't come from revenge or arguments. It comes from letting go, moving forward, and never looking back." Olivia's story is a powerful reminder that not all family relationships are built on love and appreciation. Sometimes the people who should care about us the most are the ones who take advantage of us the worst. Setting boundaries and recognizing your worth isn't selfish, it's necessary for self-preservation. Olivia learned that family is not an unconditional obligation, and sometimes, walking away is the only way to find peace. What do you think about Olivia's decision? Was she right to cut ties with her family, or should she have given them another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more emotional real-life stories and deep lessons on family, relationships and independence.